Hello students. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to learn about the PHP and learn a little bit about what happens with dynamic web pages. But also what you're going to be doing is you're going to be learning some really important concepts of programming. So we're sort of killing two birds with one stone here, and so it's just going to be a bit of a talk through, and there will of course be some work for you guys to hand in. So I want you to listen, follow as best as you can, and you'll probably not be able to understand everything, but that's okay. So what I'll get you guys to do now, please, is to get a browser open. We'll go to Google, and if you can type in W3 PHP, and that should find where we want to go, and this is what we're looking for, the W3 Schools PHP tutorial. So if you can click on that and get ourselves to this page. Now I've just pushed F11, as you can see there, and what that's done is it's now given me full screen in the browser. So that just gives us a little bit more space on the monitor. Okay, so if I click up here, yours will probably be a little bit different. I would imagine that you'll be able to see a menu system down the left hand side, but because I've got quite a small monitor here, they've done it like this. So there's a huge amount of titles or instructions along here that we could learn, but we're certainly not going to be learning all of that. There's a lot in there that I don't understand either, but we will be learning most of these first ones here, and we'll be starting with the PHP home. So we're on this page here, and like I say, we're just going to have a bit of a talk through, and I'll explain as we're going along. So PHP is a server scripting language and a powerful tool for making dynamic and interactive web pages. PHP is widely used, free and efficient alternative to competitors such as Microsoft's ASP. Now Microsoft ASP pages are also dynamic, and they're a product of Microsoft. What we're doing is we're learning PHP, which is a free language, and anybody can use it. PHP 7 is the latest stable release. Now we have here, and on a lot of these pages there are this try it yourself, which is really good. It's an editor, and we'll be using this. But what I want to show you now is, I'm quickly just going to remove that, control cut. No, I can't. I think we might just leave that. We'll go straight into the next one. So we go to the next page, and this is our introduction. Now here we go. PHP code is executed on the server. Now you remember when in that last video task I was trying to explain dynamic pages and how they were different from static web pages. And what I said was that a static web page is immediately returned by the web server. With a dynamic web page, I said that the page is read on the server before it is returned. And this is what they mean here. PHP code is executed on the server. So that's exactly what they're saying there. Okay, the page is read before it gets sent back to the client. And we're going to be seeing how that works soon. Okay, what you should already know, before you continue, you should have a basic understanding of the following. HTML, you guys have learnt some HTML. You know what CSS is. You don't yet know what JavaScript is. We'll be covering that later. For the moment, for today, we're not going to need to know JavaScript. But like I say, that will be a module coming up. at some stage. Okay, what is PHP? It's an acronym for Hypertext Preprocessor. It's widely used open source scripting language. We've learnt that. The scripts are executed on the server and it's free to download and use. Okay, here's some interesting stuff. It's powerful enough to be at the core of the biggest blogging system on the web, WordPress. So if you have ever heard of WordPress or used a blogging website, the chances are it was made using PHP. And it says it's deep enough to run the largest social network. Now Facebook uses PHP too, so that's what runs Facebook. It's also easy enough to be a beginner's first server-side language. Right, it says beginner, well that's why we're here, because you will find it easy enough to start with. Okay, what is a PHP file? Files can contain text, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and PHP code. Well, just like we know that a file can contain HTML, CSS, so can it also contain PHP. It's executed on the server, and the result is returned to the browser as plain HTML. Okay, I'm not going to explain that. You'll see and understand what that means shortly. PHP files have the extension .php. Okay, so hopefully you understand that. Every file that we make and we save it as a .php file, it's going to be, it becomes a PHP file and it can be executed on the server. What can PHP do? Generates dynamic page content. Look, I don't think I'm going to go through all of this. That will possibly be a little bit confusing at this stage. Yes, we won't worry about all of that. It's best just to actually start using it and you'll find out. Why PHP? Because it runs on Windows, Linux, Unix, Mac, and just about every other platform. We don't really, like I say, I'm not really going to worry about that. Okay, so that's good. Let's move on to the next one. Installation. Well, we're not going to be installing PHP. So we'll just skip that. If you want to do this at home, certainly go ahead. You'll need to read this page, but it might be just a little bit advanced for you guys at the moment to do that. The syntax, it's a script executed on the server. We've said that 2 or 3 times already, and plain HTML result is sent back to the browser. Right, so I'm going to explain that or show you that soon. The basic PHP script, not going to worry about that for the moment. The default file extension is PHP. We've learned that. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Okay. So let me see if I can delete this. Okay. So I want you guys to do this. Hopefully you're on the same page that I am at the moment, which is the PHP syntax. And we get to this example and we'll click on try it yourself. And right, so this is really good. This is why I brought you guys to this page, so we can actually experiment with a PHP file even though we don't have a web server and we're not actually saving a PHP file. So what I'm going to do is just cut that out of there, and I hope you guys can understand this. This is like, we've covered this. This is HTML, and this should be straightforward for you guys. It's HTML tag, we've got a body tag, we've got an H1 tag, we've got a body tag, we've got an HTML tag. Okay, and if we were to run that in a browser, we'll click run, and we wrote that HTML tag code, this is what would pop up. So the HTML tags have all disappeared. The browser's come across the H1 tag and it knows to make it a big heading, so it's put that up. And then we've got the end HTML tag, the body, and the end HTML. Okay, so that's what happens. Right. Now, that's what would happen if we just saved it as a .html file. If we saved it as a .php file, and we put it on a web server, and we viewed this file through our browser, exactly the same thing would happen. But if we were to insert this, okay, now this is where the magic starts. Remember, before the web server sends back the page, it reads the page first. And the reason it's reading the page first is because it's looking for this. This is exactly what it's looking for. It's looking for the less than sign, the question mark, the PHP. Okay? And that tells the web server that it's got something to do. And it'll do it, whatever is, I'll just indent that, make it easier to read. It will do whatever is in this PHP code block. So this is where it finishes. This is where it starts. This is where it finishes. And it will do this line of code. Right, so now I need to explain this. Echo. Echo is exactly the same as, well, sort of a little bit like the message box in VBA. What it does is it puts, or it writes out whatever is after it. Okay, in this case it says hello world. So it's going to write that and send it back to the browser, send it back to the client, just as if I had written it up here. Okay, so if I write hello world up there, then that's just HTML, and that will send out to the browser, and exactly the same thing will happen here. Okay, notice because it's a string, or it's just text, we have to put these quotes around it. And then the other important thing, every line in PHP must finish with a semicolon. Okay, I'm just going to take that off, and let's run this and see what happens. Okay, so there we go. What's happened here is the web server has read this page before it sent it back to us. It found this, and then it thought, well, I need to do some things. So it says echo, which means just write out the words hello world, and that's where it finishes. And then the instructions to the web server finish there, so it will just continue sending out this HTML. And that's the result. Does that sort of make sense? Okay. If we were to put, let's say, some tags in here, let's make it an H2 tag. And in here, then it's just going to write out to the browser exactly that. And if we run it, you're going to see now that the hello world will be a little bit bolder, but not as big as this up here, because this was an H1, whereas these are H2, and I should be pointing out this. Okay, so there we go. That's our first piece of PHP, and it just sits. You could say it sits within our HTML, and it gives instructions to the web server to do something before it sends it back to the browser. Okay, now I'm a bit unsure where we go here. Let's go home and hopefully we head back to where we were. No, that's not right. Okay, I'm going to stop it at that. Okay, so I've got us back to our PHP syntax, and we've really seen enough on that page, so we're going to go to the next page, and this is talking about comments. Okay, so just like any coding language, you can put comments in some code, and it is only for us to read. It is not going to be part of the program, and that's exactly what this says. A comment in PHP code is a line that is not executed as part of the program. Its only purpose is to be read by someone who is looking at the code. And actually, yeah, comments can be used to let others understand your code or remind yourself of what you did. This is actually worth reading. Most programmers have experienced coming back to their own work a year or two later and having to re-figure out what they did. Comments can remind you of what you were thinking when you wrote the code. And that's exactly why you write comments. You want to write good comments, make everything nice and clear and easy to understand. And as well as that, we do that with indentation. So just remember that, you guys, because this is a big thing, making things easy to read, easy to understand, and I'll be pushing that quite a bit. So PHP supports several ways of commenting. Okay, right, so you can put okay, let's go back to VBA, and let's click on the try it yourself. Right, so remember, in VBA, all we did for a comment was we put a comma in like that, and that worked in VBA, but it doesn't work in PHP. We need to put 2 forward slashes, and then that whole line there will then become a comment. But if we go down to the next line, you can see the color change there, so it hasn't affected that line. And there we go. There's another way of doing the same thing. The hash, that also gives us a single line comment. Now I need to go back to that last page, and I've discovered that I need to push F11 and then go back to this tab. So I'll push F11 again to make it full screen. Now the great thing about PHP is that we can do multiple line comments, and that is done with a forward slash and a star. And once you do a forward slash and a star, then you can comment lots of lines until you do the opposite, which is a star and a forward slash, and that finishes your comment. Okay, so that, I think, yeah, I'm not going to worry about that. So that's, just remember about those two different ways of doing a comment. We've got multiple lines with a forward slash and a star, and single lines with either 2 forward slashes or a hash key. Okay, right, so that's all we need to know about comments. We'll go to the next one, variables. Okay, well, you guys, I hope you know from your maths classes what a variable is. Basically, a variable is it's just, think of it like a box that you can put things in, you can put values in, and it will remember the name of the variable, it will remember the value of whatever you put in. Now variables also need a name, and yeah, that allows you to use that variable. Anyway, okay, so in PHP, a variable starts with the $sign, followed by the name of the variable. And here's some examples here. We've got a $sign, and that means that we've got a variable, and then it's txt, and then immediately we're going to be putting into that variable the words hello world, or the characters there. We can also put a number. When we put a number in, we don't need to have those quotes that we did up there. And so there's a number that's going to go into the variable x. And we can also put a decimal pointed number into the variable y. And let's just read this. The statements. Yep, okay. Yep, okay. Right. Okay, so let's go to the try it yourself and let's do a little bit of experimenting with variables. So here's our PHP. So well, let's start from the top. This is all just basic HTML, and then inside our HTML we've got some PHP. So the web server now starts to realize that it's got something to do, and it's going to be doing it down to the end here. So really, to make this easier to read, we should tab in because that's where it starts, that's where it finishes. And then of course at the end we've got some HTML to finish it. So let's see what happens. We've got a variable called text, and inside that we're putting the values hello world. We've got another variable called x, and inside that we're putting the value 5, and we've got another variable called y, and it's got 10.5 in. Now remember, the echo writes it out to the page, or writes it out as HTML. So it's going to write out the value there, which is hello world, and then remember you've got to finish with the semicolon, and then we've got another echo which is writing out a break break tag. Now let's jump over the other side. You can see the result here. That's interesting. They've got hey up there, and that's not appearing there. So let's just run this and get the true result of what's appearing here. Okay, so the echo is writing out the text, and it's saying hello world, and there it is up there. And then it's writing out a break tag, so that what that's doing is forcing us down to the next line. And then it's and then echo x. Now x up here is 5, so there's our 5 there. And then we're putting out another break, and then we're writing out echo y, which is 10.5. Okay, so that's a very basic use of variables. Now let's text is, yeah, that's okay. Let's do a bit of maths. Okay, so we're going to go, we've got x and y. So in this one here, let's do this. We'll copy that. I'll get you guys to follow along. If you want to learn something, you have to actually do it yourself. And watching people doesn't actually learn it until you start doing it yourself. So we're going to do this. So we're going to go y plus and then x. So that now should write out the 5 plus 10.5 and show. So our answer underneath there should be 15.5. So we'll run that, and there we go. So what we've done there is we've added those two together. Okay. What I should say is that these are short variable names. It would be, you always want to, like I said before, keep things very clear. So let's give it a better name. Might call it first number, and we'll call that one second number. I'll just go number. Now, when you're doing variables, you never have spaces in it, so there's no space in there. If I put a space in there, we would have an error pop up. So now I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it down here and paste it over here. So there's our first number, and then I'm going to copy that, and this is the y one. Oops. and paste it there, and finally paste it here, and that's going to give us exactly the same result. But the difference is that now we've got better naming of our variables so that we actually know that they are numbers. Okay. Right, I'm not going to bother running that because we're just going to end up with exactly the same result there. But that's the important thing about this is that if ever we want to create a variable, we must begin it with a $sign. Okay? And the other thing you've learnt is that a variable never has a space in it. So if I was to do that, that would not work. Okay? No spaces in variables. Remember the semicolon at the end, and that's how it works. Okay, let's head back. So we'll go back to our variables. I don't think that there's a few other rules with variables, but I'm not going to worry too much about them. But I will just point you to this one here. A variable name cannot start with a number. So in our last example here, we've called it first number, but we couldn't call it, put a 1 there. Okay? You're not allowed to do that. Every time we have a variable, it's got to start with a letter, not a number. Okay, right, that's going to be it. We will go to the next one now, which is scope, variable scope, and I'm going to skip that. We won't worry about that for the moment. I just want to... Right. Okay, echo and print statements. We know what the echo does. If you come across print, it pretty much does the same thing. It's slightly different, but we don't need to worry about that. So we will just skip that. The next one is data types. I was going to skip this, but a string is characters. We've already used that. An integer is a whole number. We use that also in VBA. It's the same in PHP. A float has decimals. Boolean is either true or false. That's all it is. And there's a few other here, but we might come to arrays shortly. But other than that, we're not going to worry about it. Here's an example of a string. These are all strings. Okay, they've got quotes around them. Now you can do either the double quote like this example, or you can do the single quote. But whatever you do at the front, you need to do the same at the back. Okay. What else have we got? The integers. I'm not going to worry too much about that. That's getting too much in detail for the moment. Okay, string functions. Okay. Remember in VBA we used the length function to find the length of the first name in Excel? Well, we've got very similar functions in PHP. This string length is pretty much does exactly the same as just the length function. So let's have a look at this one here. So if we use our string length function and we put that string into the function, then it's going to tell us how long that is. And if we count the characters, I'll see if I can, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and that's exactly what it says there. Okay, so if ever you need to know how long a string is, we can use that string length function. Now, PHP has a huge number of functions. There's other things. We can do a word count. In this case, it will tell us that there's 2 2 words, hello world 2 words. We can reverse a string, so if we use string reverse on hello world, it's going to output that, which can be useful sometimes. I'm not going to worry about explaining why. A string position, search for a text within a string. So if we wanted to look for world within hello world, it will tell us where the W starts, and it will tell us that it starts at character number 6. So that's the string position. There's a lot of other string functions. I'm not going to go into any more of that. We're not going to need them for the moment. We'll go to the next one. Okay, numbers. You guys know what an integer is. They're basically whole numbers without any decimal part. It says that. And yeah, I'm not going to worry too much about that. We don't need to learn this. There's lots of math functions. We'll skip that. We're going to skip constants. Operators. Okay. An operator is... There are different types of operators. I'll quickly show you the basic ones. We've got addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulus, and exponentiation. Yeah, that's getting into advanced stuff, but it's there. Hopefully one day you guys are programmers and will use that stuff. We've got assignment operators. Now you're already familiar with the equals, okay? And I've explained, I'm going to explain now because some of you may not have had the explanation, but an equals will always take the value on the right hand side and put it over to the left hand side. So if we had 5 how do I explain that? Whatever is in this value here will then end up in X. We won't worry about going any more than that. There's other operators here. I'm not going to worry too much about it. Okay, the other useful one to know is this equal operator. Yes, I won't explain that. That probably best just explained when we come to actually doing a demonstration. So we'll skip this, and I think that we may... We're getting there. We've only got a little bit more to go. Right, if else, if then. Remember in VBA we've used the if statement. Now, the syntax of PHP is different from VBA. Remember we went if something then. Well, it's a little bit different. Well, it's sort of the same in PHP, but we write it differently. So what happens is we write if, just as we did in VBA, and then we need to have the open bracket, the close bracket, and then the condition. So we might say if 1 is less than 3, and then the answer to that would be true. Okay, so that's the condition. And the condition must always be either true or false. So if we were to say if 5 is less than is greater than 10, then the answer would be false. Now, whenever the answer is true, then the code will be done whatever's between this bracket and this bracket here. Okay? Only if it's true. Okay, and that's what it says there. If the condition there is false, then it will jump underneath this bracket here. These, by the way, are called curly brackets. These are called round brackets. So the syntax is if, round bracket, condition, close the round bracket, open the curly bracket, code to be executed, if the condition is true, close the curly bracket. And remember, in VBA at this stage we had end if. Okay, so here's an example, and let's try it. So once again, you guys do that. Follow along with me. Right, so I'll explain what's going on. We've got our HTML. The web server's come across this, it's found this, and it says, I've got some work to do. Okay, that's what the web server has done. I'm going to indent that to make it easier to read. So it's going to do from whatever happens from here down to here, and then it will just output this HTML. Okay, right, what's happening here is, remember, this is a variable because it begins with the $sign, and the variable is t. And so assumingly they mean time, but that doesn't matter, it can be anything. That whatever's there, we can just state whatever we want. Equals. Remember, the equals means we're going to take whatever's on this side and we're going to be putting it in to this side. Okay? Now, date is a function that's going to return the date, and then this is getting to a little bit complicated, but basically what's happening then is that we're telling date h, which means that all we want is the hour back. Okay, so I'm not sure. I'm going to actually cut this, and we'll just echo. We're going to run an experiment here. We're going to echo out this t just to find out what this is going to produce. Before I do, now we need to have that semicolon, otherwise it wouldn't work. Okay, and just before I do that, I want to explain that this is important. PHP is case sensitive. That means uppercase and lowercase are different. So if I was to use a capital T there, that's not going to work. It's got to be, if we're going to output the value of this variable, then we need to use the same case. Oops, the same case like that. Okay, remember, PHP is case sensitive. Right, let's run that and see what it's going to output. And 13. Okay, so it says the hour is 13. Now, if you've noticed, been watching my computer screen, you'll see for me at the moment, it's 9 o'clock at night time, and it's certainly not, it's not hour 13. So this is actually really good, because this website here is held in the States. I would assume it is USA, and remember, this code here, because it's PHP, is being executed or read on the server, not on my browser. So when it gets the hour, that hour is the time of wherever the server is, not the time where we are now. Okay? It tells us it's 13. Right. So I'm going to paste back in that other code that I cut before, and we'll read it. Okay, if t, the value of t, is less than 20, it's going to say echo, it's going to write out have a good day. Okay, because that there, that's going to say 13 is less than 20. So is that true or false? It's going to be true. Therefore, it's going to do this. Okay? So let's run that, and you will see that happening. Actually, I've made a little mistake. Yeah, that's a mistake, because we didn't put a break in. So what we need to do now is, let's just fix up our code, and we will put in, it's a string, so we need to put it in between quotes. We're going to put the BR tag in. Okay, and then we'll finish it with the semicolon, we'll run that, and you should see it pop down. Okay, there we go. Okay, so remember, this is an if, this is how we do an if. If, open round brackets, this is our condition, is it going to be true or false? And if it's true, well, we need to have the round bracket and then open curly bracket, and if it's true, then this code here is going to run. If it's false, it wouldn't have run. So just to show you that, let's change that around. If t is greater than 20, then we're not going to have this happen. Okay, so there we go. T was 13. Is t greater than 20? No, t is not. Okay, so it's not going to run it. In fact, I don't think that we need to have those quotes. Personally, I wouldn't have done it. I think that we could have just run it like that, because 20 is a number, not a string. So let's run it and see if we get a coding error. And it hasn't. And that would have been a better way of doing it. Okay, right, hope you guys follow that. Let's go back. I'm going to click this, close this, and go back here. Right, so that is that. Right, let's carry on. Now, this is a little bit new for some of you guys. This is the if-else statement. Right, I think that let's go straight to the example. We'll try it ourselves. And once again, it's funny that they don't indent. So I'm going to indent to make this easier to read. Okay, we know that this is going to put 13 into here. Okay, so if 13 is less than 20, and I'm going to take those quotes out because it's better that they're not there, then echo have a good day, and you can see that that's what it's saying. But if it's not less than 20, then we've got this else. Okay, so I'm going to drop this down here. We've got this else happening. In other words, this is going to be false and not true. Okay, if this is false, then it's going to say else. Once again, we've got open bracket, curly bracket, close curly bracket. Everything for the else is going to be in here. Okay, I haven't explained that very well, but hopefully you can understand it. So I'm going to make this greater than 20. Although this doesn't really make sense. The trouble is that we're in Australia, the server is in America, so we're getting a funny value in that t. Okay, let's run it, and you'll see now it'll say have a good night. There we go. Okay, right, so what I want you guys to know out of this little example is the if and the else. So, and the condition up here, if it's true, it's going to run this here. If the condition is false, then it's going to go else, and it's going to run this down here. Okay, pause the video there and study that if you need to, but that's important. Okay, right, let's go down, and there's other things. I'm not going to worry about that. If you can understand that if else, you're doing very well. Okay, right, let's right, okay, let's go back here. We're going to go to the next one, the PHP switch statement. I'm not going to worry about the switch. Now loops. Remember in VBA we did loops. So remember in VBA we did a while loop, so we've got that in PHP, and we've done a for loop also in VBA. And once again, those two loops are very common in many programming languages. They use the same names. It makes it easy for us. There's also a couple of other loops here. We've got a do while and we've got a for each loop. The do while is very similar to the while loop, and the for each, well, that's I won't worry about that for the moment. Okay, so where do we go? Let's go next. So here's our while loop, and look at, there's our syntax. Now the condition, the syntax here, it's very similar to our if. We write while, and then we've got open round bracket, close round bracket, in the center. If the condition is true, then we go into this curly bracket and finish it at the other curly bracket, and this code will be executed when the condition is true. So here's an example. Let's try it ourselves to get the idea of it. Okay. So here's our PHP. So now the web server starts to, it knows it has to do something. And as usual, I'm going to have to indent this so it makes it easy to read, because down there, that's where the web server stops executing. We've got a variable and we're putting 1 into the variable. Remember, everything goes from right to left over that equals sign. The while, the condition, and this is where the start, the curly brackets, and inside the curly brackets, this code here is executed providing this condition is true. Okay, so let's see what's happening. The first time it goes through, x is 1. So is 1, this is basically saying 1 is less than or equal to 5. Is that true or not? Well, yes, 1 is less than 5. Okay, so now we go into here because it's true. Echo, that means write out the string. The number is, okay, now what's happened here, this is really interesting. You see how the string begins here and ends here? Now if you ever put a $sign inside a string like that, PHP believes that that is a variable. Okay, so it will just place the value of the variable in there. It does make it a little bit confusing, so there's another way we can do this. I'm going to change it slightly. You can join them using the dot symbol. I'm pretty certain I'm right about this. Okay, so this is going to now join all the strings together. Okay, and remember in VBA we used the AND. It was like that, it was the AND symbol, but this is not VBA, this is PHP, and we use the dot, and the dot joins strings together. So it's going to say, it's going to write out the number is 1, and then it's going to put a break tag in it. And then, now this is interesting, okay, this is cool, because remember in, what this does is it increments x. What I'll show you is it's going to make x, which was 1, now become 2. And remember in VBA, we did it like this, plus 1. Okay, so x equals x plus 1, and that's going to increment x. And that's going to do it exactly the same. Let's run this, and we should end up with exactly what we've got there. So we'll run it. Okay, number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this goes through 5 times every time that x gets one more number until x becomes 6. And then when x is 6, what's happening here is it's saying, is 6 less than or equal to 5? Is that true or false? Well, 6 is greater than 5, so therefore the answer is false. So it doesn't go and do this, it jumps straight down and out and finishes. Okay? So you can see that that's what's happened. Right. It's quite interesting. We don't have a space here, so I should have put a space in here. I'm just going to put a space there so that it just makes that a little bit better. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to take it back to what we had here. I'll just do it underneath so that you can see. If we do a number variable, and then go plus plus, and actually I'll finish it with a semicolon, that is the same as this. So it will increment x. If x is 2, it will make it 3. If it's 3, it will make it 4, and so on. So now we can get rid of this, and rather than get rid of it, I'm going to comment it out. So remember the comments are // and now it won't do it. Okay, let's run that. I hope you guys are following this. And we've got exactly the same thing, but now we've got a space in there, which I put in here. So that's our while loop. Okay. Yep, let's go back. So that's the while loop. The example explained. Hopefully that you guys can look at that if you like. Hopefully you'll understand that now that I have explained it. I'm not going to worry about that. Here's an exercise. You guys can fill in the blanks. Hopefully you'll see the answers there. Push submit answer and see if you get a positive response. Okay, let's go to the next one. You might want to be pausing the video. I'm going to go to the next. Okay, the do while loop. Right, we'll talk very briefly about this. It's very similar to the while loop, but the do while, the condition is after the code is executed. Okay, that's the only difference. And of course the syntax. You need to write do there. Okay. Not going to worry about that anymore. We're not going to do that. You very rarely, when you're coding, you very rarely use a do while loop, or I very rarely use it. Okay, now we're on to the for loop. Now this is a different type of loop. We have actually done it before, and this is where the for loop is used to know when you know in advance how many times the script should run. So if you want to run the loop 100 times, this is a good loop to use rather than the while loop. Okay, so it's a little bit harder to understand this, but what I'll point out to you is the syntax. We start off with for. As previously, we've got the open round bracket, the close round bracket, we've got the curly bracket, the code to be executed, and the curly bracket to finish off. And then in here it gets a little bit confusing. I'm going to point out that there are 2 semicolons here, and remember we've used semicolons for breaking up lines. Well, this basically here is 3 lines of code. The first line is the initializer, and then we got the test, and then we got the increment. So it sounds confusing. Let's see how it works. And here we go. Let's try the test. Try it for ourselves. Okay, so let's have a look at, okay, so we've got a for loop. It's going to go round a certain number of times. We've got a variable and we're putting 0 into it. Okay, and then we go into this next part and we've got our variable and we're testing whether it's less than or equal to 10. So there's the test, and providing the test happens, that's when we will do this code to be executed. And then in the next loop we've got our incrementer. Okay, so it puts one more. And let's have a look at the code here. Echo, it's going to write out the string, the number is, and once again I'm going to change this because I don't like the way that they've written it, although obviously it works. You can do it that way, but for a beginner it's probably best if we do it this longer way. So I've got 3 things here and I've joined them all together with that dot. And the first is a string which says the number is, and then whatever is in that variable, the first time around it's going to be 0, next time around it's going to be 1, etc. And then we're writing out a break tag, and if we run that, there we go. The number is 0, the number is 1, the number is 2, number is 3, number is 4, number is 5. Let me show you something else that we could do. Right, we can't do it here. I'm going to go down here. Imagine if we had a cat picture and it was cat JPG. Okay? This is something that we could be doing with our dynamic web page. So that's a picture that we would have on in our website. Let's say it wasn't cat JPG, we had cat1. Okay? Let's say we had another picture called cat2. Okay? And copy cat3. Okay, and we went right up to say 10, and let's say on our web page we wanted to put 10 of those pictures all down here. Okay, now remember that, I hope you guys are going to be able to follow me. Remember that the tag to put a picture in is image, and then we've got the source equals, and then the name of the picture, cat. I need to put that quote there. Cat, and then we'll use that X there as the number 1, so that'll be that one there. And then after that we need to go dot JPG. Okay, and then we need to finish our tag off. Right, now if we were to run that, that would put the 10 cat pictures all down there. Okay, one after the other, because it's just HTML code. Okay, now if I was to push the run button, unfortunately it's not going to work for 2 reasons. One is because obviously we don't have these pictures, and the other reason is because we've got a tag in here, we're not going to be able to see that code. But you know what we will be able to see? We should be able to see little squares that says that it can't find the picture. So I am going to run it. I'll just get rid of this. as that shouldn't be there. We're going to run it now, see what happens. There we go. There's our 10 cat pictures, if it could find them. Unfortunately it can't. But just to show you that the code is there, I'm going to remove this tag here, so that it doesn't become a tag and we can actually see the code. So I'll run that, and there you go. So we started off at 0 rather than 1, but that's okay, that could be fixed. In fact, to fix it, what we need to do is change that there to a 1. So let's do that. We'll run that. Okay, so there we go. That is the HTML code if we wanted to put in 10 different pictures using a simple piece of code like that. Right, you guys, this is getting a long video task, so I'm going to try to move it along. In fact, I'm not sure if we've got any more to show you. Let's have a look. We're not doing the for each. The break and continue. Very briefly, I will show you that the break, it allows us to break out of a loop. Okay, so we've got a loop here. We're counting from 0 to 10, and once it gets to 4, it's going to break out of it. Okay. I don't want to spend any more time, but you are welcome to come along here, continue experimenting and learning. This is really good stuff that you're learning if you're still following it along. And hopefully, I'm hoping one day that we are able to get a web server at the school where we can do this for real, because it's starting to get into some really interesting stuff. Okay, right. I think that that's going to be it. Let me have a quick look down here. We've done loops. I'm going to leave it at that. I would like to cover functions and arrays, but I'm going to leave it at that. Okay, so I will be adding to this to explain what I want handed in, you guys. So it'll probably be written in the worksheet with this. Can you please follow those instructions? Otherwise, we will see you in the next task.